Speaking of doing it all, our next guest, former NHLer Thomas Hickey, joining us from the bowels of Rogers Place. How's it going, Thomas? Welcome to the show.
Yeah, you're right. I'm surprised I got a signal right now, but no, I'm good. Ready to go. Should be an exciting game this evening with the Oilers and Islanders, and just caught up. Got the scoop on all things Oilers from Louis DeBrusque, and from the Islanders end, start of a big road trip for them. So they're looking to build on some stuff right now and sort of get back above the 500 mark, much like the Oilers are.
You work for MSGN, NHL Network. You're part of the Amazon Prime broadcast as well. And with that, you've been spending a good amount of time in Edmonton now, 2 straight weeks with stops in our cities. What have you thought of it?
Yeah, back to back. I'm a Western guy, so, can't beat it for me. It was home in Calgary the last 2 nights, which is great. And always fun coming to Edmonton, whether it was the old rink or the new one, much like Long Island. It's nice when you got a brand new rink, but always special for me. Growing up playing junior in these rinks and then coming back and playing in these cities, it's a blast. It's a different feel, not better or worse, but it's different when you're in Canada. There's something special about it. At least there is for me.
Let's talk about this Islanders team a little bit. Again, we only follow them from an outside perspective. And honestly, when I saw the news about Matt Barzal and I looked at their injury report a couple of weeks ago, I was like, things might start to get really shitty for the Islanders, and they've made me eat my words. Points in 3 straight. What's been driving them, even despite their injury woes?
Yeah, it's really impressive. I mean, they went through a stretch. They lost in one game. They lost all of their top 3 left-handed defensemen, and with that, they called up a bunch of guys, and they just found a way to survive. And this team did it 2 years ago with Matt Barzal. Went out with an injury right down the stretch during the playoff crunch time, and they found a way to pick up points nonstop. They just sort of come together, and I think they're at their best when they're better. The sum of their parts is maybe better than you would expect. Right now, what's driving it, a first line, if you want to call it that consists of Anders Lee, JG Pageau, and Bo Horvat. Horvat, the highest pedigree of all those guys, but it's like they're checkers that play a game with a bit of touch, and they sort of drive the group. But on the back end, Isaiah George, 20 years old. This team's went through a few defensemen. They called him up, and he's played over 24 minutes his last 2 games, and really just giving them quality minutes. And I think that's something that they really needed. And look, this group's always going to rely on their goaltending with Ilya Sorokin going tonight. But they've just found a way, and it's been impressive. They probably played a better team game since those injuries than they had previously on in the season. And it's not a blessing, obviously, when you lose guys like Duclair and Matt Barzal, but I think it finds a way for this group to just play a little bit simpler, and they work for their goals. They've been rewarded for that hard work, but it's nothing pretty, but the execution's been good. It's just the way they banded together and really worked for everything that they've got.
Yeah, sometimes an injury can kind of spark everyone up a little bit. We saw it. Oilers won 2 or 3 without McDavid. Lehman.
What do you think the ceiling is for this Islanders team? Obviously, a lot of injuries right now, but where will they be at the 82 game mark, you think?
By what I said at the start of the year and what I'd say true right now is they're probably fighting for a wild card spot, just like the last 2 seasons. And it usually comes down to the final weekend or the last 2 games that really decide if they're a playoff team or not. And nothing's going to come easy. I don't think they might be a group that goes through a stretch where they get hot and score a bunch of goals. But they're much improved defensively this year. And last year, you associate the Islanders with really stout, defensively strong team. They weren't that last year. They weren't that 2 years ago. The underlying numbers were really poor. And this year, they actually have that. So I think when we get to April, this is going to be a team, we'll call it 3 points above or below that wild card cutoff line. And they found a way each year to get in, just sort of the way that it's been done on Long Island for a long time. You just grit it out, you find a way and get in, and then you take things from there and see what your chances are once you get to the postseason. But I expect them to be right in that spot that they were the last 2 seasons.
Something I'm always curious about with former players who get into the media, you just mentioned there, like, the underlying numbers tell a different story. When you were a player, did you ever pay attention to the underlying numbers at all, or is that something you just started learning about now that you're a broadcaster?
Only if they were good for me, then I'd pay attention to them. What I say about the analytics, underlying numbers, whatever you want to call them, they're so much more refined now than they were 10 years ago. 15 years ago, there wasn't really such thing. You had Corsi and Fenwick, and the indication of what these numbers can tell you now is so much more advanced. And I think every single year gets more and more accurate. It helps you paint a picture. And really what it's good at now, not so much it does help on an individual basis. If this guy played really good and you can see the offensive chances that he created, or someone had a poor defensive game, but I look at more the team aspect of it. How many odd man rushes did they give up? How much time did they spend in their own zone? Where are they getting their quality looks from? Where are they not getting looks from? If a team, might look like they're playing well and they get a bunch of shots on net, but they end up with 4, 5, 6 high danger chances a night, well, that might not be enough in the NHL with how good goalies are. So I sort of focus in on things like where those opportunities are coming from. Is it a good team off the rush? And how much time did they spend in their own zone? Because over time, that's really what creates wins and losses. So it's not so much on a game-to-game. It's not so much on players, but the team's profile sort of gets built as the season goes on. And those numbers are generally pretty true to how a team plays.
One from the chat that I wanted to pass along your way. Cody's in. He started it by saying the pride of the Calgary Royals. And then he said, Tommy, do you think you bite the bullet and sell? Like you mentioned, they should be right around that kind of 3 points up or above the cut line. But like if they're 6 points out, if they're 9 points out, do you think there's any part of Lou Lamoriello that would sit there and go, okay, maybe I need to make a tough call on a Brock Nelson or someone like that? Or do you think Lamoriello and this Islanders front office is just wired to win only?
I love the Islanders, the Royals shout out, first of all. You know what? I'm not saying I'm careful to speak for Lou, but he's got a mind of his own, and he's constantly evaluating his group. And I think that there was times in the last 2 years that you looked at the Islanders and thought they maybe should sell, and they found a way to sneak in. He's got a good pulse of knowing if his team can make it or not. Certainly, if you fall way out of it, you need to look at the guys like Brock Nelson, who, he's a great number 2 center. He could be a number 1 on some teams, 30 goal guy, perennially. There's some big trade chips here, but this team's focused on winning. And unless they're well far out of it, I don't think he entertains that. I think it's someone that's always checking the pulse, always trying to improve his team. But if you look at the way this roster is constructed, the contracts that they do have, it's to win now. It's not to win next season. It's not really built like that. I think you need a change in philosophy if you're going to go there. But I think the way the team plays will dictate it. And Lou's pulse on whether he's got a playoff team or not has been extremely strong. So, we'll see when March, April comes, or before the deadline in February. But it is really tough to say. But some appealing guys with a lot of playoff experience that would be good elsewhere, but would make them even better on the Islanders.
Yeah, fair. Before we let you go, one thing I always like to ask when we have former NHLers on, do you remember the team you played against in your career that you had the best success against? One building you always walked into and delivered. Who do you think you had the best offensive numbers against in your career in the league?
I mean, do you know the answer?
I do, which is why I like doing this. It's a great quiz.
Well, you know what? I would always go divisionally. I would say the Rangers. I always got up to play the Rangers. Didn't score a ton of goals. I remember scoring a handful of them against the Rangers. I loved going into Minnesota for whatever reason. I had some of my best games in Minnesota. If I had to pick one, I'd probably go divisional. I'd probably say the Rangers. Did I get it right?
So the Rangers, it was close. You had 7 career points against the Rangers. You actually had 10 against the Penguins. But what I found interesting was if you go points per game and goals per game, Minnesota's the answer for points per game. Edmonton is they're like a percentage point below, though. You had 7 points in 10 games in Edmonton.
Oh, geez. I mean, that's good for me. So I'll take that. Yeah, I remember, it was always special for me because when I'd come back to Western Alberta or Western Canada, and come to Alberta, I had family at those games all the time. And there's an extra level that brings you up. And I remember my brother was really ill, and he was in the building. He had a brain surgery, and he was able to make it. And I remember that game was one of the best games I played in my life because I knew he was in the stands. They scored a big goal against the Oilers, so I remember that. But there's always a little extra juice when you're close to home, and you know the people that you love are in the stands watching.
Appreciate your time, man. I hope you enjoyed your trip once again back through Western Canada here, and we really appreciate you popping on.
All right, you got it, guys. Thank you. Take care. Keep it up.
Thanks.
There you go. Thomas Hickey, former NHLer, MSGN, NHL Network, Amazon Prime. He's doing a lot. He was great.
He was awesome.
Yeah. What's up, Nation citizens? If you like that video, then you need to be subscribed to the Oilers Nation YouTube. Podcasts, live shows, exclusive interviews, and analysis. Everything you need from your favorite voices at Oilers Nation. And you don't want to miss any of it, so hammer that subscribe button.